Wolfpack, we are thrilled to welcome on for the first time Mr. John Shipley, the beat writer for Sports Illustrated's Jaguars Report. John, thank you so much for joining today. How are you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good as well. First day of school, so back to the real world, but also a good one as well. Good to connect with colleagues and whatnot.
Yeah.
And pumped to be able to talk to you. Especially the Jaguars, has been a lot of interesting stuff going on this preseason, up and down to say the least, to start the Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence era here, this regime. So I'm excited to have you on here, sift through some of these injuries, the news, and preseason performances. You ready to dive in with me?
Yeah, man, definitely a lot easier to talk about them after they finally looked good in a preseason game. You know, those first 2 weeks, I was coming on podcast and I was like looking for the positives. And I was like, it's just a preseason. Maybe it'll look good eventually. But, Sunday, albeit against backups, they had a lot of offensive backups, pretty solid game. So I'm ready to dive in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we start at the top there with the man who looked fantastic finally in that week 3 preseason game you're alluding to, Mr. Trevor Lawrence, after this long, drawn-out competition with Gardner Minshew, the first overall pick. He's officially the starter, and they looked so mediocre, as you were saying, but finally we see 11 for 12, 139, 2 TDs in just 3 drives. Let's dive into Lawrence and his fantasy prospects in this can't-miss pick. How has he kind of looked for you in practices throughout this preseason, and kind of what are your expectations for him in this offense?
Yeah, no, I've been really impressed by what Lawrence has shown just in terms of his, complete package as a player. He's clearly an athletic player who can make plays outside of the pocket, which you always want to see from a quarterback. And, I think if there was one negative from kind of his debut against the Browns, it was that he wasn't using his legs enough. And then ever since that game, the Jaguars have put him on the move more. And he's, the last 2 weeks, he's made a lot of plays on the run. And then training camp, that was a big strength of his, making plays, making throws while on the run, to those intermediate parts of the field, using the tight ends. And, it's just you see that he's truly that kind of athletic quarterback with a big arm who can make every type of throw. I personally, in the 3 years I've covered the Jaguars, they haven't had that kind of quarterback. They've had Gardner Minshew, Nick Foles, Mike Glennon, Jake Luton, etc. have started games. So he's clearly just in terms of physical skill set, a different level. And then you look at some of the things that he does that I think are kind of advanced for a quarterback, especially as young as he is. Just his work in the pocket, his movement, moving in and out of the pocket, resetting his depth, and really how he handles pressure. I mean, of course he was playing against backups against the Cowboys, but there was one throw where I believe it was a right guard give up a pressure. He was hit, immediately as he threw it. It was a big hit. That's a hit, no matter who it's against. That's a tough throw to make. But he makes a first down throw right on the money to James O'Shaughnessy. I think you remember which play I'm talking about. It just he had a fantastic day, no matter the context of it. And I think they're going to be rookie ups and downs. He's definitely a guy who doesn't take the small plays as much as he should. So I think he's going to throw a decent bit of interceptions. But I do think they're going to utilize his legs a good bit and ask him to throw the ball deep.
And fantasy-wise, I mean, that's what the goodness is made of, the deep throws, the big plays, and also the leg points. I think a lot of people overlook that with Lawrence because we have these freaks in Trey Lance, Justin Fields that are such Konami code upside, we call it in fantasy. Trevor Lawrence can run too, though, and I love I mean, prayers up for Tebow. Everything is cool he tried out, but that could have been a nuisance at the goal line if he stuck around a Taysom Hill style guy. So there's definitely a little bit of rushing touchdown upside with Lawrence, a little bit of upside I think a lot of people are overlooking. Now, Vegas set his line at 4,050 yards and a half and 25 and a half TDs. What are your thoughts on this Vegas line, John?
Ooh, I'll go over on the touchdowns, but I don't know about the yards. My only hesitation on the yards is, of course, consensus #1 overall pick, best prospect since Luck, all of that. I do think he is that talented and deserves all the praise because I think he has that skill set, but he's still a rookie quarterback. At the end of the day, he's still gonna face a lot of new things for the first time, and he has a lot of areas he has to improve in. So I'm hesitant to say he's gonna, come out and throw for 4,000 yards as a rookie, but I do think they're gonna give him a lot of opportunities in terms of scoring potential in terms of his arm. So I'll go over on the touchdowns.
Gotcha, indeed. Well, let's move on to the other big new face there over in Jacksonville. That's Urban Meyer, and I know it hasn't been the warmest of welcomes at times. He had these dominant stretches at Florida and Ohio State, 187 to 32 wins and losses, but the transition to the pros hasn't been so smooth. There's rumblings players aren't thrilled with him and his style, and so far the team, they did look atrocious till last week. So ultimately, what's kind of your take on Urban Meyer and just the overarching feeling around the Jags organization with him there?
Yeah, no, that's not to discount anybody's reporting. Of course, Pete Prisco, is super respected. I respect Pete a ton, but from my own personal conversations I've had, I've heard the opposite in terms of
Really?
players'
Good.
opinions on Urban. So it really seems like something that's split down the middle. It definitely has done some bizarre things, and the area I thought he would struggle in is personnel and really that kind of roster building, and that's the area where in terms of having a quarterback competition and trading a guy for a 6th-round pick. That's not showing as much foresight at the NFL level. That's an area I thought he would struggle in, but I haven't gotten the sense that he's struggled with players at all. I've gotten the sense actually that he's actually been more of a player's coach, and that's from conversations I've had with actual people on the team.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know because you read these reports, it sounds like it's horrendous over there. So it's good to hear the alternate view, hear some opinions from the guys down there on the beat. That's why we like to invite you guys in. That has me feeling a little bit better about Trevor Lawrence and some of these weapons. What about in terms – yeah, what were you going to say? Sorry.
And I say that as somebody who I've critiqued Flier at a lot of stops, especially the quarterback situation with Minshew and Lawrence. So, so just that's more so what I've really observed. I think he has a lot of areas he has to work in, but I think so far in terms of players being fed up with him per se, I don't think that's more so an issue.
That's good to hear for sure. Well, what about in terms of the offense he's putting in there and him and Darrell Bevell? What type of scheme are you kind of expecting? Is it going to resemble those Ohio State attacks, or what is your idea for what type of offense we're going to be getting here from the Jags?
I think it's going to more so resemble what Trevor Lawrence did at Clemson. A lot of play action, deep throws, a lot of RPOs, a lot of screens. And they're going to mix it, I think, with Darrell Bevell and Urban Meyer's philosophies, which is, both of them believe in running the ball and hitting explosive plays deep off play action off of that and taking advantage of numbers in the box. The problem is the Jaguars, they have to figure out how to kind of mesh, all those philosophies together because, you're taking so many different things. Brian Schottenheimer, he's the passing game coordinator, but he's basically the quarterback's coach. You take him, you take Bevell, you take Meyer, and then you take having to fit in Lawrence. It's just a lot of different moving pieces, and you can tell, they're still kind of transitioning there.
Gotcha. I believe it was either your piece, it might have been one other writer I was reading that mentioned that whenever they've had a rookie quarterback, whether it was Schottenheimer or Bevell, they led the league in rush attempts, right? It was either you or somebody else who noted that. And that's pretty fascinating to me because you get this number 1 pick in here. You think they're just going to use that arm to its fullest potential. Do you expect them, though, to be extremely run heavy, or do you think that might change under these guys?
I think they're going to be extremely run heavy. I don't think there should be any question about the amount of work a guy like James Robinson is going to get, especially now without Travis Etienne, because, really you look at the philosophies of guys like Meyer and guys like Bevell, it's to utilize the running game in the running back position. You just watch them throughout the preseason. They obviously aren't going to show you the full offense, but they've emphasized a lot of multi-tight end sets, a lot of, rushing the ball right down the throat of the defense, and a lot of play action. So I think they're going to spread out the field a good bit because they do have that talent at receiver, and they're going to try to incorporate a lot of those spread concepts. But I do think the running game is going to be a big part of their offense, and a bigger part than it was last year because, for as much as Robinson got in terms of a workload last year, he was, I believe, a top 8 in carries. They had the lowest, pass to run ratio because, obviously worst team in the NFL. You're trailing every quarter, you're going to throw it a lot. I think that you're going to see a lot more carries out of them this year than last year.
Indeed. Do you think Robinson, last year he was averaging, I think, close to 90% of the snaps. It was insane.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, which is a wild workload. Do you think we'll get that type of touches? As you said, 8th in carries. I think it ended up being like 6th in total touches because he was involved in the receiving game as well. What type of workload are you kind of projecting for Robinson? And is he looking as good as we saw last year as well?
He hasn't been able to in the preseason do much on the ground just because they've had their offensive line out for basically the entirety of the preseason. They've been running behind reserves, but in the preseason, the one thing he's been able to do individually is win as a pass protector. And you look at him compared to a guy like Carlos Hyde, who has struggled in that area in the preseason. I think it's clear that James Robinson now without Etienne is the Jaguars' true, third down back. And, I think he has the best chance to earn, really a full-time role in the offense. I wouldn't expect him to play 90% of the snaps. It wouldn't surprise me if it was more like 70-30, but for Robinson to be in there on really the important downs.
That's really important too. Yeah, receiving, just like the running points for the quarterback can really unlock that ceiling. Receiving work for the running backs, 2.57 times the value as a target compared to a carry. So could be a huge ceiling there for James Robinson. And his price has fallen right around rounds like 3 or 4 still. It doesn't seem like everybody's adjusted for where he should be going. So I love that value. You've mentioned, though, Carlos Hyde as well. Do you think this guy is going to be involved enough to be worth a late round flyer? Or how's he looking? I know he's an Urban Meyer standover. Is he looking solid, or what's your thoughts on him?
I think he's going to be involved a decent bit. I think especially now with Etienne out that he has a solid hold on, the backup running back job. I would consider him really a lock to be the number 2 running back now with Etienne out of the picture, because even before Etienne was injured, Hyde was getting snaps over him in the preseason games. And for the Jaguars, the preseason was mattering because they were using it as a true tune-up. So, how they were sending the guys out in terms of depth chart, that actually mattered. So Hyde getting snaps over Etienne showed he was already the running back too, but that could have been expected to change. But now I wouldn't expect it to. But I don't think he's going to get significant touches over Robinson at any point. He'll maybe get some goal line duty here and there, but I would still expect Robinson to be the clear number 1.
That's good to know, indeed. That's what you fantasy owners want, just that clear cut bell cow, avoid the committees. Well, one player I can't stop drafting. I love this guy. He's going in rounds like 8, 9, sometimes even 10. Certainly not in the draft Simon, because I'll be getting him by round 8 or 9. That's Laviska Shenault. I love the player, and I'm really intrigued to hear how you think he's going to be used, because Urban Meyer in those college offenses, whether it was Percy Harvin, Curtis Samuel, he always kind of had this hybrid wide receiver running back. And I imagine Etienne was kind of going to be headed towards that role. Those guys averaged over 24 fantasy points per game. Is Laviska Shenault now the next in line for that? Or how's that situation going to play out? Does he have this joker role with his offense?
I think he has to be really the next in line to get, a lot of the screen type, usage in the offense, because, without Etienne, you really, the only other option they had on the offense with similar skill sets to Etienne would be guys like Tavon Austin and guys like Jamal Agnew, and you're not going to make either one of those, the biggest name, on right. The offense in terms of that role. So I would imagine Laviska Shenault, especially been seeing how he's been used in the preseason. They've already utilized him a lot on screens. He turned one into a 20-yard gain against the Cowboys. So I would imagine, he's going to be used in that role, and he's going to be the full-time slot receiver. So I do think he'll find success just because of the style player he will just be, staying healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a stud in college as a runner, as a receiver. Do you think he'll even get like rushing work as well, similar to how like Harvin and Samuel were? Or do you think it's more so just that screen type of game in terms of his usage?
It wouldn't surprise me if he got some rushing work, but I would expect he still gets significantly more, work in terms of receiving games, so screen, stuff like that. But it wouldn't surprise me if he got carries. But I also wouldn't be surprised if, most of his carries were stuff like sweeps and stuff out of the slot as opposed to, directly out of the backfield.
Gotcha. Would he be the first receiver you take on this team?
It's tough for me because all 3 of them play such different roles. DJ Chark's clearly going to be their vertical guy who, they try to push the ball downfield with. Shenault's going to be their slot guy who, they throw the short stuff to. And Marvin Jones is, clearly their possession guy. So all 3 of them are differently. I think Lawrence has the best chemistry right now with Jones. I think if you're going to pick a guy who is probably the best bet to be the number 1 early, it's Jones. But if you had to think of a guy who's going to get the most valuable kind of targets, I think once Chark returns, as long as he can stay healthy, that he's going to get, some legitimate chances for, home run type plays.
Really intriguing then indeed. So Jones kind of the go-to guy. That seems to be the case so far through 2 preseason contests. I know he didn't play in the 3rd, but he saw 5 and 5 targets, if I'm not mistaken, in those games. So he did seem to have a good chemistry with Lawrence to start the year. Do you think he'll be able to hold off Chark, or is it sounds like I guess they're playing kind of different roles at the end of the day. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this guy since he's arrived? How's he looked?
Yeah, no, he's looked fantastic since he's arrived. He's dealing with a minor injury right now, but there's no reason to think he won't be available week 1. I believe they were just holding him out as a precaution. And he's, really in terms of, a guy of a floor, he has the highest floor, of any of the Jaguars wide receivers. If there's any guy who, I think that they're going to trust to throw those, design those 3rd down passes to and those passes in the red zone, I would think it's Marvin Jones. And there hasn't been a time in training camp or the preseason where I've kind of been, disappointed or have really thought negatively of his play. He's really just been consistent since he got there.
That's great to know. Well, they set his line, Vegas did, at 825.5 and 5.5 TDs. What do you like? Did you take the overs on either?
I'll take the over on the touchdowns. Yards, I probably will too, because I think if there's any receiver who can probably threaten to be a 1,000 yards type guy, I think it's him, and I think he's going to get 6 or 7 touchdowns.
Very intriguing indeed. You mentioned DJ Chark as well, potentially playing that deep threat role. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence can rope the ball, so that could be a great value there. He's going last among these receivers since he got hurt. Owners seem to be kind of forgetting about him. Just a couple seasons ago, 1,008 yards, 8 TDs. As a sophomore, it kind of regressed last year. What are your expectations for him this year?
No, I mean, definitely, he has to improve from what he put on the field last year. He has said as much, and Urban Meyer has said as much. And, and really the shame about his injury when it happened, it's not supposed to be a major injury. He's expected to be back week 1. But really the bad thing was it happened on I think it was the 3rd day of pads, and it was the 3 days of padded practices they had. Those were the 3 best practices he had at training camp. He was looking phenomenal once they put pads on and they were getting physical. So as long as he can stay healthy, I do think that he's going to be given, a lot of chances, because you look up and down the Jaguars depth chart on offense, and the one thing that you're really missing is speed. And, Chark gives them that element more so than any other player on their offense, especially now with Etienne injured.
Very intriguing. Yeah, if that arm, that deep ball was certainly on display this last preseason game, he could end up being that go-to guy. But the hand injury did happen. It's a minor break. They're saying we should be back. What is your is there any update on the hand injury? Do you think he'll be ready for week 1?
Meyer hasn't given a firm update other than saying when it first happened that he should be back for week 1. I would expect in the next coming days for Meyer to really talk about more, because I figured, he's going to be asked, do you expect DJ Chark still to be back? But the way he's talked about Chark, in passing over the last few weeks, every time he mentions Chark, he says who we're getting back soon. So I would expect him to be back.
Good. Awesome. That's good to know as well. The last thing I wanted to mention with Chark, there was something Meyer said, I don't know the exact quote, but something along the lines of like a big guy who plays little. Now, do you think Chark has responded well to that type of comment, or how's that been taken by him?
I think he's definitely responded well. You just look at his physical nature has changed, since last season, just in terms of he's clearly added a lot of muscle. And, you ask all the people on the Jaguar staff and on the roster publicly, who's one of the guys who attacked the weight room the most this offseason. And most of them say DJ Chark, who I believe they said added between, 5 to 7 pounds, of muscle to his frame this offseason. So I think he's definitely responded well. I've never perceived DJ Chark as somebody who would take that as a slight, because I don't think DJ Chark thought that he played well last season.
Good to know. Indeed. And his line, he actually is set for higher numbers, at least yardage-wise, than Marvin Jones right now by Vegas. 905.5, 5.5 TDs, similar to Jones right there. What are your thoughts on that line by Vegas?
I want to go over on the touchdowns just because, like I said, I feel like he's going to get a lot of those deep shots. The yards is what concerns me, because I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be, one game he might have, 130 yards. Another game, he might have 30. I think it's going to be, it's just depending on how the deep balls go in that game.
Gotcha. Now, and so we've talked about all 3 of these guys. You're on the clock as a fantasy owner. How would you rank these guys in terms of who you'd go after first, second, and third?
I go Marvin Jones, DJ Chark, and Laviska Shenault. And in terms of, if you ask me to pick who are the most valuable guys in terms of, their actual value to the football team, I might rank it differently. But if you're talking just fantasy football, I think Chark's going to get those high volume in terms of deep shots, that he's probably going to be a little bit more valuable than Shenault.
Very intrigued, because I think that's kind of flipped the order of how owners are attacking them right now. So we'll see how that all plays out. Well, before we get into the no huddle rapid fire questions, is there any other sleepers on this team that we didn't cover, or should we just move right into the rapid fire questions?
I think Philip Dorsett, if Chark is ever injured at any point, I think Dorsett's going to slot right into his role as, the speed guy they try to get downfield. But otherwise, not really. I don't think Dare Ogunbowale or Divine Ozigbo are really going to play a significant enough role to really be, fantasy relevant. And unless you're in a deep league, James O'Shaughnessy, I think, has good chemistry with Lawrence. And if there's any tight end of the target on the team, it'd be him. But I wouldn't imagine he'd be a priority.
Indeed. All righty. Well, then we'll move right into this rapid fire no huddle offense. 10 quick questions. You give me what comes to mind right off the top of the head. You ready?
Yeah.
All righty. Team's leading rusher and how many yards?
James Robinson, 1,200.
Team's leading receiver and how many yards?
Marvin Jones, 1,050.
Ooh, I like it. Team's biggest disappointment on offense this year?
I'll go Jawan Taylor.
Who's the team's biggest surprise or breakout player?
DJ Chark, because I think he'll make enough highlight reel plays.
What's the team's biggest strength?
They're run blocking and run stopping, which 2021. So
nice. Team's biggest weakness?
Stopping the pass right now and protecting the passer.
What do you think their record's going to be this season?
7-10.
And where do you think that will have them landing both in the division and any shot at the conference or playoffs?
I think they'll be third in the division. I don't think they'll have a chance for the playoffs, but I think they'll be trending in a better direction.
And the Jags will win the Super Bowl when ...
Put me on the spot here. My thing I point to is, Patrick Mahomes had the 3 best years of quarterback play in NFL history, and he only won 1 Super Bowl, and he barely won that one. So
yeah,
I'll say their windows in the next 5 years.
Gotcha. And the last question I have for you: do you play fantasy at all yourself?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome. Do you? How are you? You good? Have you won titles recently?
No, I tripped away a title last year with playing Myles Gaskin, actually. So no, I wouldn't call myself good at all.
Oh, dang. That was Gaskin had like that Thursday. It was one of the early games too. So just brutal to have happen early. Well, before we head out then, I've asked you enough questions. Do you have any specific fantasy questions for me? Any keeper league questions or anything on the top of your mind before you head out?
I'm picking 9th in a, I believe it's a 10-person league. Who should I target?
Especially in a 10-person, is it 1 quarterback or 2 quarterback league? I guess that's why it doesn't really matter.
One.
Yeah,
it's
just one. I really think one of the bigger edges you can get in 10 is Kelsey. If he falls to you at 9, there's a lot more depth in a 10-team league at running back and receiver as compared to 12 or 14. So if you can get that edge at tight end, if Kelsey falls to you, I would say you lock that up. Otherwise, you go bell cow, get a couple horses, and load up that way. But yeah, Kelsey's who I'd be looking at if I'm you.
Okay, good deal. Once I saw I got slotted 9th, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he's going to be a big edge if you can get him. And you got it's really hard to get edges in 10-teamers, so I like to go after that tight end and go for Kelsey there. Awesome, John. Well, this was amazing. Why don't you just give our listeners one more reminder where they can find you and connect with you and find your work?
All right, can you can find me at Jaguar Report, at Twitter, just Jaguar Report, si.com/NFL/Jaguars, or myself on Twitter, _John_Shipley. And, you can really find me. I'm doing stuff daily, whether it's the Jaguars or general NFL draft, NFL. I try to hit it all.
Awesome, John. Well, thank you so much again for your time and for coming on. This was awesome talking to you. And good luck this season and fantasy and the beat and everything.
All right, appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Later, John. All right, guys. And Wolfpack, now we will get to any questions you guys have. So what we got here? All right. So we got No.1. Just did my draft on Saturday. I'm hyped about the squad. Got Kelsey 12. We just talked about Kelsey at 9. So that's an even better value there. No.1, getting him at the 12-13 turn. I'd love to hear what else you round that out with. Where is everybody? Where's Mitch? Where's my usual guys? I guess this one we go a little earlier than usual, but we usually got like 20, 30 questions on these things. All good. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview again with John Shipley. Really intriguing stuff about the wide receivers there. I've been ranking them the opposite with Laviska at the top, then Marvin Jones, and then Chark. He's kind of cautioning, make sure you keep Chark on the radar and have those guys maybe flipped from what I had him. I still love this guy. He's such a good player. Looked like a beast after the catch. So I'm still going in on Viska myself. We'll find out there. Michael Schneider, what do you think of the Ravens backfield with Dobbins going down for the year? I think Gus Edwards becomes an immediate RB2. Well worth. I took him in the 5th round of a draft I did on Sunday in a standard league. A little bit less valuable in PPR. He can catch, but he's not like a world beater on there. So ultimately, I like Gus as like a 2nd rounder. I mean, they've been number 1 in run attempts per game 3 straight seasons under Greg Roman. That's not going to change this year. And there's really nothing behind him. I still think there's going to be a committee because that's kind of how they do things. So maybe it's Tyson Williams. Maybe it's Justice Hill. It sounds like Tyson Williams has been really outplaying Hill so far, so that's a really good sleeper. But Edwards, anytime he's seen 15 or more carries, he averages 94 yards a game. Bulldozer, led the team in goal line attempts last year. Just an intriguing fifth-round pick. Maybe you can even sneak him up in the sixth, because right now when you're drafting, his ADP is still so much lower. So intriguing stuff for sure. Jags. Yes, BK. That's the Jags. Hi, Wolf. I have my draft tonight, and I'm excited, says Hillary Margaret. I'm excited for you. Let me know how it goes. I'm with you on the wide receiver there. So Preble and me are in agreement, but again, I might have to trust the guy that's actually there every day at practice, the beat. So intriguing stuff for sure to make sure to check out. Made the trade we chatted about. Thanks for the help with that, Prebs. I love it. Carson and CD for Jefferson and Sanders. I'm just not a big Sanders fan, so I think you made out with that one for sure. Do you think Urban Meyer will still be the coach of the Jags in 2 years? I do not. Although it sounds like, according to John, the vibes are a little better than what some media outlets are going on. He says a ton of players have raved about him and his style, especially the younger guys who are kind of used to that style. So maybe it won't be quite the disaster. The guy's won everywhere he's gone. I don't think it's going to go so well, though. I think it's going to be a dumpster fire. But it does sound like there are more positive vibes than a lot of people have thought there. How's the first day of school? Thanks for asking, Charlie Prebs. It was solid and easy. They always do a couple professional development days, so no students yet. Kind of good to get back in there, get the building, see some staff I hadn't seen in over a year. We were all remote last year, so it was good in that sense. Obviously, I miss being able to go live and do projections and everything with you guys, but also really nice to catch up with a bunch of people that I haven't seen in so long. Schneider got Laviska in the rookie draft and Mims. I'm not a big fan of Mims, but I really think Laviska can break it out. Mims is going to have to get to another team, I think, if he's going to ever break out. Still can go deep, still has some talent, but Viska is definitely the one you got to be banking on there, Schneider. J-Rob ceiling, says BK. I mean, look at last year. The guy was a monster. 1,400 yards, like 10 touchdowns, catches the ball. Then he finishes the RB7. I don't think he'll ever get higher than that, but there's not any reason he can't come close again. John was saying earlier, he thinks they're going to run the ball more often because of how much better the team is. They can actually stay and run heavy scripts. That's what Darrell Bevell led the NFL in run attempts the last time he had a rookie quarterback. Same idea with their pass game, Schottenheimer coordinator. When he had Mark Sanchez, he led it. So, yeah, J-Rob has quite the ceiling. I think top 10, just like he was last year, is well within his range of outcomes. All righty, guys. Well, thanks so much again. Let's get some late questions in there. All right, got Terrace Marshall this year. Third is amazing. I mean, that's better than Mims. It's better than anybody you took. Yeah, I think Marshall's going to be a great pick. That's going to turn around your streak of pretty tough receivers so far, Schneider. For sure. I got to check out your – I know you messaged me, Schneider. I'll be honest, I forgot. After I messaged you, let's check this out after dinner. I forgot. So I'm going to go get to that right when we hang up. Make sure I get to that for you, Schneider. But Wolfpack, thank you guys again so much. I'm going to be live in a little bit to recap preseason week 3, risers and fallers. It's 4:20 right now. I'll aim to get on within an hour by 5:30. If you guys are free and have some more questions for drafts coming up this week, I'll be recapping all that action, who has changed in values, obviously some huge injuries to make sure you guys are ahead of on before this draft this week. You can find all our content, roaststreetjournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Me personally at Roto Street Wolf. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be on the lookout. The guide should be dropping any day now. Alrighty, guys. We'll see you, hopefully some repeats over there at 5:30. Later, Wolfpack.